You've been lied to about lying. They told you honesty is virtue, integrity is strength, that truth will set you free. Meanwhile, the people who fed you that narrative are building empires on carefully constructed fictions. They're closing deals with strategic omissions. They're raising capital with manufactured metrics. They're shaping reality itself while you're paralyzed by some kindergarten morality about telling the truth. Nietzsche saw this coming over a century ago. He understood that truth isn't some sacred absolute floating in the heavens. Truth is a tool, and the moment you learn to wield deception with precision, something irreversible happens to you. Something society fears. Something that separates the architects of reality from those who merely inhabit it. The modern world runs on a specific kind of programming. From childhood, they install this operating system in your mind that worships transparency, celebrates authenticity, demands disclosure. You're taught that the honest man sleeps well at night. They don't tell you he sleeps in a studio apartment while making $70,000 a year, watching his dishonest competitors buy their third property. Walk into any corporate environment and watch the dynamics. The person who transparently shares their strategy in meetings gets their ideas stolen. The employee who honestly discusses their other job offers gets marked as disloyal. The founder who discloses every risk to investors watches funding go to the competitor who painted a cleaner picture. This isn't coincidence. This is systematic. The herd needs you honest because your honesty makes you predictable, controllable, harmless. Nietzsche called this slave morality. The weak cannot compete with the strong through direct confrontation, so they invent a moral framework that makes strength itself evil and weakness virtuous. Honesty becomes sacred not because it's powerful, but because it chains the powerful. Think about who benefits when you're radically honest. Your employer benefits when you transparently discuss your lowest acceptable salary. Your competitor benefits when you openly share your business model. The system benefits when you're psychologically incapable of strategic deception because you've internalized shame around it. They've weaponized your guilt. Every time you feel that pang of conscience before a calculated omission, that's not your authentic self speaking. That's their conditioning maintaining your position in the hierarchy. The transformation begins when you're carrying the weight of this programming through life like a beast of burden. You're the camel in Nietzsche's Metamorphoses, loaded down with society's moral imperatives. Thou shalt not deceive. Thou shalt be transparent. Thou shalt honor thy word, even when it destroys you. You watch the honest path lead exactly where it always leads. Financial mediocrity, social invisibility, the quiet desperation of people who played by rules that only apply to them. Something breaks. Maybe it's watching a dishonest colleague get the promotion you earned. Maybe it's realizing the company's core pitch to customers is fundamentally misleading and nobody cares. Maybe it's seeing how much of business is theater, narrative, perception management. The scales fall. You see the game clearly for the first time. The second stage is rebellion. You become the lion, roaring against the moral framework that kept you domesticated. You start testing boundaries. A small exaggeration on your resume, a strategic omission in a negotiation, framing a failure as a learning experience to investors. Each transgression feels seismic at first. The guilt is overwhelming because you're fighting decades of conditioning, but then you notice something. The exaggeration got you the interview. The omissions saved the deal. The reframing kept the capital flowing. The world didn't end. Lightning didn't strike you down. In fact, you're gaining ground. You're watching people who don't know you're lying, treat you with more respect, offer more opportunity, hand over more resources. The feedback loop is intoxicating. Your honesty was keeping you poor. Your strategic deception is making you powerful. Watch how the actual power players operate. They don't lie crudely, they construct reality. The CEO doesn't say the company is failing. He says they're pivoting to capture emerging market opportunities. That's not dishonesty in his mind. That's framing. The investor doesn't admit he's desperate to deploy capital before the quarter ends. He implies he's being selective, and you should feel privileged he's considering you. The politician doesn't confess he's beholden to donors. He speaks about stakeholder alignment and constituent representation. These people have transcended the binary of honest versus dishonest. They've entered the third metamorphosis. They've become creators of their own truth. This is where it gets dangerous. The child in Nietzsche's framework isn't innocent. The child is beyond the moral categories that constrain adults. The child creates new values, new games, new realities. When you reach this stage as a deceiver, you're no longer lying to achieve specific outcomes. You're authoring the narrative itself. Your manufactured persona isn't a mask you wear. It becomes who you are in every context that matters. Your carefully constructed company story isn't deception, it's the official history. Your strategical missions aren't lies of commission. They're simply the parts of reality you've chosen not to emphasize. You've achieved something Nietzsche understood the truly powerful always achieve. You've made your will to power indistinguishable from truth itself. The mechanisms are precise. Deception at this level isn't about fooling people. It's about controlling the frame through which they interpret reality. You're not lying about revenue numbers. You're contextualizing them in ways that emphasize growth trajectory over current profitability. You're not being dishonest about your capabilities. You're confidently projecting the person you're becoming rather than limiting yourself to who you've been. This is psychological warfare, but it's warfare everyone with power is already waging. The only question is whether you're a combatant or a casualty. Every interaction becomes a negotiation over whose version of reality prevails. The person who can maintain frame, who can make their narrative feel more real than objective facts, that person accumulates leverage. They shape decisions. They attract capital. They build empires on foundations of carefully managed perception. But Nietzsche wasn't naive about costs. He asked whether you could embrace the eternal return. Could you live your life again and again, exactly as you've lived it, infinitely? Apply that to your deceptions. Can you repeat that lie to your business partner forever? Can you inhabit that manufactured persona through infinite iterations of existence? This isn't about moral judgment. This is about psychological sustainability. The lies that align with your will to power, the deceptions that serve your authentic drive for dominance, those you can repeat eternally. They're not really lies. They're expressions of who you're becoming. But the deceptions that contradict your core nature, the ones that require you to betray yourself rather than just others, those will hollow you out. The eternal return is a filter. It separates sustainable power moves from self-destructive ones. The abyss gaze is back. Neuroscience confirms what Nietzsche intuited. Habitual deception rewires your brain. The prefrontal cortex activity that normally creates stress around lying diminishes with repetition. You become neurologically comfortable with dishonesty. But there's a cost. Your ability to distinguish between your constructed narratives and objective reality degrades. You start believing your own manipulations. The persona consumes the person. You've built wealth, accumulated power, dominated your domain, and you're no longer certain which parts of your own story are true. You're isolated in a prison of your own construction. Nobody knows the real you because you've made the real you irrelevant. You've achieved the ultimate Nietzschean transformation. You've become your own creation. The question is whether that creation is a god or a monster. Nietzsche predicted exactly what we're living through. Modern society is a battlefield of competing fictions. Social media has democratized reality manipulation. Everyone's curating their existence, manufacturing their highlight reel, crafting their personal brand. Truth isn't dead. It's just one option among many competing narratives, and usually not the most compelling one. The most successful people aren't the most honest. They're the best storytellers. They've mastered the game Nietzsche described. They've moved beyond good and evil into pure strategic effectiveness. You're standing at a crossroads. Path 1 is becoming the sophisticated deceiver. You'll build wealth, you'll accumulate power, you'll dominate your environment through superior reality construction. And you'll do it knowing that your empire is built on managed perception, that your relationships are strategic performances, that you've sacrificed your connection to any truth outside your own will. Path 2 is more subtle. Become the strategic truth teller. Understand that in a world of liars, selective radical honesty becomes the ultimate power move. The person who can afford to tell the truth in moments when everyone expects deception gains disproportionate trust. This isn't morality. This is advanced tactics. honesty as a weapon precisely because it's so rare. The paradox Nietzsche understood is that the most effective deceivers know exactly when to tell the truth. They're not compulsive liars. They're strategic reality architects who use honesty as one tool among many. Can you bear the weight of your own power? Can you build your empire knowing what you've become in the process? The choice isn't between good and evil. That's slave morality talking. The choice is between conscious power and unconscious weakness. Choose deliberately, choose knowing the cost, but for God's sake, choose.